What is up, designers? My name is Will and I'm here with my mother to teach you guys the basics in Photoshop. What is up, guys? So I'm here with my mom. Do you want to go and introduce yourself?
I'm Susan Haddock.
Hello, Susan. For the sake of this video, I'll just call you Mom. But so I was trying to come up with an idea to teach you guys the basics in Photoshop. And where I get my design is kind of from my mom. My mom's kind of the old school designer. We both won the same award in high school. I won Most Outstanding Graphic Design Student for my high school, and so did my mom. But times are different.
30 years earlier.
Yeah, but and she was back when they still had the whole it was like paper, like you didn't use computers.
We had font machines and we had to take negatives and do all of our designing with photo negatives.
Yeah, so like way back. And so she's been talking to me about how she wants to get into Photoshop and learn the whole thing. So I thought, what better way than to, teach a new graphic designer in Photoshop and to teach you guys than to, work with my mom and kind of get her perspective. Because I don't remember what it's like to be a new designer in Photoshop, and so it'd be harder to teach.
And I'll just say that Will gets his interest in design from me, and if I had the technology that he grew up with, I probably would have continued in the field.
Yeah, but so let's get into the basics. So we're all looking at the same screen here. So what is your first impressions when you're looking at this interface?
A little bit overwhelming.
A little bit overwhelming. Okay, so let's go to the basics. So the first tool that you start out in Photoshop is the selection tool. All right, but first we have to create a new window. Like, we have to open a document. All right, so you go File, New, and so right here is going to be your new window. So this is how when you create something, you're always going to start on this page. So to keep it simple, I'm just going to go through the basics with you. So the name, that's the name of the document. Like, you work in Word, so when you name your jobs and stuff like that, that's what the name is. Don't worry about preset. The width is the width of the document in pixels. And pixels are like little squares. It's the resolution. And then the height is the same thing as the width, but going, vertical versus horizontal. And the resolution, now this is where it gets interesting. Now we have a DPI. DPI stands for, it's basically pixels per inch, or it's some other word, but I don't want to confuse you early on. So, we have 300 DPI right now. Usually this will start at 72, and, that's just how many pixels are per inch. I always go at 300 to keep it more HD, especially when I work with logos. But we'll keep it 72 to keep it simple for beginners. And then right here is your color mode. Now there are two types of colors that you'll really use, and that's CMYK and RGB. Do you know what those mean?
I do not.
Alright. RGB is red, green, and blue, and it's used for websites, or anything web-based. And then CMYK is cyan, magenta, yellow, and then I think the K stands for Kuler, but I'm not exactly sure what the K stands for. But that's used in print design. So you really use CMYK in Illustrator when you're actually making something that's going to be printed to a fine point. And so we're going to use RGB because web and that kind of fun stuff. And then 8-bit, that's just the connections. And then we have background contents. We have transparent, white, background color, which this right here is the background color, or I should point with the mouse. But I'll get into that later. And then other. And then other is where you can actually select the color on your color thing, or your color chooser, picker, whatever you want to call it. And so we're just going to leave it as, let's just make it white. And then, so we're going to go and hit OK. So now we have the document open. And so now, what is the first thing that you've seen that has changed? Besides there being a big white square on the screen.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I don't see anything that changed.
Well,
other than the big white square on the screen.
Yeah, let's run down the tools then. So right here we have our select tool. All right, this is where you can select something. So the background layer is actually locked. So if we double click this, we can unlock the layer. That makes it editable, so we can use it. So now if we select it, see how the background over here changed? Because we're moving this layer around. So this is the tool that you use when you want to move things around. Alright, and so let's go ahead and Command Z so it goes back to normal. Our next tool right here that we're going to talk about is the rectangle Marquee tool. It's basically your selection tool. So if you want to select any part of your image, you just want to grab this tool and then draw the box around it. And then that'll select a portion of what you've done.
Okay.
And then you can actually move this around, or you can click away to deselect it.
Okay.
Alright, and then you have several options when you go here. You have like ellipse, so you can do like a circle. You have, you know, a single row and then single column. So you have different types of tools there. Then we have, let's skip to our brush tool. So our brush tool is what you can use to kind of draw. And so you can add things to it that way. So you can kind of, you know, do whatever you want to do there. And then the other there's two more tools I want to go over with you. One's going to be the pen tool, which is a tool that I use a lot. And I actually made another video about how to make a logo using the pen tool and stuff like that, which you guys can check out by clicking the little annotation on the screen. So pen tool is another really powerful tool that we'll use. And then we have our text tool, and this is basically as the name goes, you know. Oh, hit the wrong button there. And so now we have text. Alright, so how confused are you at this point?
I'm understanding things pretty well.
Oh, okay, awesome. And so next thing that we're going to talk about that's pretty crucial to learning Photoshop is your layers. That's really what you use Photoshop for. And so I have my layers right here on this side. And so as you see, we have layer 0, and then we have our text layer. And so it goes in order. So like whatever layer is on top will be the foreground, and whatever layer is the like very bottom will be the background. So like if we move the text layer below, it's hidden behind this layer.
Okay.
And so you see this little eye drop right here? This is your hide and show key. So if you want to hide a layer, you click it and it'll go away.
Okay.
And then you can click it again and then it'll show it back up. So if you want to hide stuff, you can do that as well. So, I mean, we have a pretty good understanding of the general interface now. So you can kind of work with this a little bit more. So do you have any questions up until this point?
Well, I would just be interested in knowing how you add a third layer.
A third layer? Very good question. So right here, this button, so there's a series of icons down here. There's a trash can, a little square kind of document, a folder, a circle with half of it cut out, and so on and so forth. This layer right here, the little document, is how you create a new layer. And so with this layer, you can grab your brush tool, which we already talked about, and you can draw on it. And since it's the upmost layer, if we were to, you know, change the color, you know, see how it kind of it overlaps there. And so, and by the way, I'll get into how you change the color in just a second. Alright, so, and then the next layer, or the next little icon down here, I mean, the trash can's pretty self-explanatory, that's how you delete layers. And so then the next one is the group. So if you actually wanted to group something together, so let's add a folder or a group. So say you wanted to group these two layers together. So if you grab that layer and you drag it into the group, it's now in that group. And same thing with the text. Alright, so now we have a group, as well as, you know, our other layers. Alright? And then the next layer over here is our adjustments layer, which that's a little bit more complicated, so we'll get into that a little bit later. Then we have our masks tool, which is kind of the same thing, a little bit more complicated. And now we have our layer styles. So this is where you're going to be able to add your color and add all your effects right here. So you can like click on and hit color overlay, gradient overlay, that kind of stuff. Alright, so do you understand it so far?
So far,
not confused?
I do understand it. And it just dawned on me why you're teaching me this. Because I want to learn, but because I won't bug you to do stuff for me.
Alright, so you caught me there. My plan is ruined. But, alright, so now let's get into it a little bit more. So, how long is this going to go? So we're almost at 10 minutes. So we'll do about another 10 minutes, and then we'll kind of cut it off. And that way, we don't overwhelm you and kind of... So we'll just go over, you know, the basics. So we're at the interface right now. Let's continue with the interface before we go into like changing colors and all that fun stuff. So if we're going over here, see these two little blocks right here, this black and white?
Yes.
This is called your foreground color, and this is called your background color. So the black is foreground, white is background. And that is because the white is behind the black, so that's your natural background color. And so if you double click on the black, you now can change the color of your foreground. And I'll get into what that means in just a second. So let's make this red, alright? So now our foreground is red, and let's change our background color to an orange color. Alright, so we have like a red and orange now. So if you go ahead and grab your brush tool, And let's make a new layer. Oh, go ahead.
I just noticed that it didn't change the existing...
Well, that's what I'm about to tell you. This is like your color, like this is like when you're actually like painting something, you know how you have the many options of colors?
Yes.
Now we have our brush tool, and now we're about to pick the color that we're about to paint.
Okay.
So this is kind of like your color palette. You know, this is the colors that you can use right away.
Okay.
And so you can draw now in the red color, or if you click the button directly above them, the arrow that's kind of changing, if you click that, it'll change the foreground to background. And then you can paint in the orange, alright?
Okay.
So does that make all sense?
Yes.
Not confused? Alright. And so the foreground and the background are kind of like what you have, what you can use. So I'm going to teach you guys another tool here, which is our paint bucket tool. So this is the tool you want. Like if you want to change the entire background, you'll grab the paint bucket tool, click on your background layer, and then say we want to change it to a blue color. So we're going to change the foreground to a blue, and then we're going to click.
Okay.
And then that will change the entire image. Or if we want to change just the selection, so now we're going to grab our rectangular marquee tool, and say we want to change just this section, this part of the background, we want to change to a lighter blue color. So then you change your foreground to a lighter color, and then grab your paint bucket tool, and then click.
Okay.
And then if you hit Control or Command D, it'll deselect the selection. And that's a little shortcut, but I don't want to confuse you guys with shortcuts and all that kind of stuff. But so then if you deselect, so now we have just that section that we selected is light blue. And so let's select this color, or this section right here, and let's make that orange. So, boom. So does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So the foreground and background is, I'm asking you a question here. What is the foreground and the background?
The background is the background color, and the foreground would be what you would be writing over the background.
Perfect. There you go. And so the background is kind of like your color weighting. It's like, you know, in baseball terms, because we're a baseball family, it's your guy on deck. So
Okay.
your foreground's your batter, and then your background's the guy on deck. So when you're done with the batter, then the guy on deck's going to come up, and then you can use it like that.
Okay.
All right? So that will make sense.
So you have to switch the color on the side in order to use it.
Yes, there's a shortcut to changing it too, which is the X key. So if you ever want to quickly change between your foreground and background, so say like you're drawing here, and let's make a new layer, and let's go ahead and make it white. So we're going to click our foreground, we're going to make it white, we're going to grab our paint bucket tool, click. So now the background's white. So say we want to, and let's change the foreground to a blue. Alright, so say we want to brush. So we're painting here in blue, right? And we want to quickly change to our background color to change the color. If you hit X on the keyboard, go ahead and press X. Boom. Now it changed the foreground and background. So now we're painting in the other color.
Okay.
Alright? And so that's a quick way to do it, or you can click that button right there. And then that will flip those two as well.
Okay.
Alright? And so as far as the interface goes, that's the basics as far as interface. And so so you know how to, we basically in this tutorial, we went over the selection tool, we went over the marquee tool, we went over the brush tool, the text tool, and the pen tool, briefly. And then we showed you how to change the colors and how to, you know, start selecting the colors that you want to use, as well as, you know, making new layers and adding, making a group and grouping specific layers. And the good part about grouping a specific layer is if you want to hide that entire group, it's one click. So instead of having to go through and hide like each individual part, we can hide the entire thing.
Okay.
Or, and now this goes a little bit beyond interface, and I'll retouch on this next time we make a video. But if you double click on any layer, but not on the name, because if you double click on the name, it'll let you edit the name of the layer. But if you double click in this like blank area right here, it'll bring up what's called your layer styles. And so let's go to, you know, say we want to change this background right here. So let's hide everything but the background layer. Say we want to change this entire layer. If we double click and hit color overlay, it'll change it. And then if you click this box right here, it'll allow you to change it to any color that you want. Alright?
Okay.
And so, and the good part about grouping is, say we have this. Say we want, we have a green background and we want the text to be white instead of black. If we double click on the group, it'll do a group layer style. And so if we change the color, it'll change every color in the group.
Okay.
And so that goes like, so say like this stuff that we added here, say we want to change it, we want to add it to this group, we just click on it and drag it over the group and it'll add it to the group.
Okay.
And then it'll change all, and then since the group has a layer style of a color overlay that's white, the entire group, anything in that folder will have a color overlay of white.
Okay.
So pretty basic, and so we went through it now. We showed you how to group things. We showed you how to add layer styles. We only went over one, which is the color overlay. So in the next video, we'll get more in depth into the specific aspects of. So we'll break down some more tools. We'll go over some more effects in our layer styles, and we'll just play around with different text and kind of go like that. So thank you, Mom, for joining me.
You're welcome.
And thank you guys for watching this beginners in Photoshop tutorial. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and it's gonna be every Friday. We'll try and make it every Friday. No promises on that. As well as some other, quick tips and tricks for all you non-beginners. But thank you, Mom.
Thank you.
And
get started.
All right, there you go. And as always, guys, go mad, designers.